Hello and welcome! What time is it today?
Pizza time.
It's time to rate the units for Zero Space for all the factions, of course. And yeah, we got them laid out here. All of them are present. And to get a nice sort of reference, we are going to start with the workers, of course. So, first up, the Seedling. The Seedling is a very good worker. You get multiple, like from every building, every expansion building you make, like the HQ building. And yeah, they can be used for a lot of things. They can be infused and then still built, which is amazing because you can fly around, scout, and throw down all the buildings wherever you want. Sure, they can only build on grass, but they can also be used to scout, to draw enemy fire if you rally them into their armies, which is usually not what a lot of Growl players do because cultivators are so powerful. So often you just use them for building cultivators instead of just scouting the map, which you can do even though they die of grass. They die in, I don't know, about 30 to 40 seconds of grass, so it's enough time to have them set up as spotters on the map. Anyway, yeah, the Seedling is a solid, let's see here, it's a solid, I'd say, B tier worker. Definitely just good overall. That it can build when being infused, so when it's flying, is quite strong. But it also does not have other advantages that we are going to see for, let's go with the Protectorate Worker now, because the Protectorate Worker, of course, can build buildings anywhere, it doesn't die, and it can heal every single unit the Protectorate have, which makes it, I think, a little bit better than the Seedling. So let's go straight to A tier. The other things that the Seedling can do, like scouting, of course you can also put your Protectorate Worker somewhere on the map and have it spot. And the more you get one per base, so yeah, the more bases you have, the more free spotters you're gonna be able to use, and of course increase the healing on all of your units. So A tier it is. Now let's get the last worker rated. That's of course the Legion one, and the Legion one cannot heal like the Protectorate Worker does, and it therefore is just C tier. I know it's kind of rough not being in B tier, but not being able to also like repair every unit. It can only repair tanks. That is just a lot weaker than the Protectorate Worker. So yeah, it scores a decent C tier. Of course, all workers are very important and powerful for the game, because all of them build buildings. But yeah, this is about the rating as far as the worker goes. Anyway, let's now move on and rate this Harvester here. I kind of drawn around the blue backdrop, which means it's the Protectorate Harvester, of course, and that one is pretty sweet. Harvesters in general are very tanky units, so they can take a lot of hits, and the Protectorate one is especially good at taking hits because it has the AoE healing ability, which is instant. And yeah, just overall very powerful. It can also heal itself just while on the map, which is great. You can just have it sit somewhere if it took damage in the early game. If you remember, just select it, heal it, and sure, the ability will be on cooldown, so you won't be able to use it for another minute, but the worker will have its HP back, so eventually if another attack or run by of some sort comes, yeah, it just will have more HP at that point and probably not die. Also, it can be recalled very easily, so that is also powerful, which makes the Harvester for the Protectorate. Let's see, how high up do we want to go? I think it makes it a solid B or A tier, honestly, that is the question. I think we're gonna go with B tier. Yeah, it's just overall solid, but it doesn't like break the game or anything. So it's great though. And also, I might rearrange these if I figure out that the balance kind of is not where it should be, like that some units are better than they appear on the list, or like are better at some other units, and we can add rows. But this is how I'm fine with putting the Harvester for now. Alright, next unit, the Artemis. The Artemis, of course, when it came out, was off the charts, one of the busted units ever seen in an RTS, but after its healing got reduced to a way more reasonable amount, the Artemis is still a very good unit. It has a nice attack, it flies, and yeah, it's a good addition to any Protectorate army. It's quite far down the tech tree though, which makes it a little bit weaker, but it's a solid unit. It's an A tier for sure. You're never going to be like, oh no, I have an Artemis in my army. Oh, that's so bad. Nah, the Artemis is always a threat, and yeah, therefore definitely an A tier. It's not as fast, and its damage is there, but not as high, so it's not quite an S tier unit, but it's a very good one. I mean, let's see, it's probably also better than the Worker. Yeah, so let's turn those two around. Next up, one of my favorites, the big-ass tank, the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is just a cool design in general. I like these double-barreled tanks because they're somewhat ridiculous, but also look very cool and very, very powerful. So yeah, the Juggernaut, also with its heat ability, it's a very unique-ish ability, and it looks cool. It's strong. It's kind of small without the upgrade though, but if you have multiple Juggernauts and a bigger army, you can actually push the rooted Juggernaut when it uses its heat ability. So technically it's even microable. And of course it can also be recalled while using the heat. That is kind of nice, so it's good against the small type swarm units like Stingers, but overall its damage is like okay, its HP is okay, so I'm gonna put the Juggernaut as a solid C tier unit. It's a big tank, it kinda does what you want it to do. It's a good ground attacking muscle type thing, but yeah, that's just other options that are gonna be more powerful. Next up, we got a Legion unit, the Ranged Thrall. One of those, let's say, core centerpieces of one faction's army. And yeah, the Ranged Thrall is great. You get 2 of them per unit build. Its damage output is actually quite good. It can, in theory, beat, like, it, not in theory, but it beats Commandos in terms of DPS and cost-wise. Loses to them then when microed though, but they also, of course, fuel all of the Legion's heroes and their abilities, like Galavac's Lightning, of course, is a favorite use for them, or the value in Death top bar talent, which helps them to heal their own heroes and, of course, increase their attack speed, which is kind of core to the Legion experience, and also something that is overlooked quite often. They do increase tanks' attack speed as well, so maybe if you're getting stopped too much by like if your heroes are getting stomped too hard, just add some tanks and the Thralls will be able to fuel those as well nicely. So the Thrall, the ranged one, of course, solid B tier. You want lots of them. They do what you want them to do. They fuel your heroes, but their HP is very low. And if you go further down into like the game, if the game progresses a while, then that really becomes a huge problem. You will just lose a bunch of Thralls, and every engagement because they are not very microable. They are just like, they don't have a lot of abilities to split. Also, they have to stick together as an army because, of course, they are your hero fuel and everything. So yeah, it makes them very solid unit. You're always gonna prioritize making them, and that is a solid B tier. That is what B tier is all about. Alright, so the Grell Harvester. The Grell Harvester, very good unit. Like, it's amazing. It has a passive heal, which means that if you don't kill it when you harassed it, it will be at full HP the next time you attack it. So, given that Harvesters just are very, very tanky, this one is especially hard to kill because it regenerates all its HP, and you don't have to even like use an ability to do so. And speaking of ability, it can plant cultivators for free. Cultivators, of course, being one of the best buildings in the game, being able to be upgraded for the cheapest amount of all the defense buildings, and then providing a lot of power, a lot of damage, a lot of map control, and even shield your units quite nicely from attacks. And on top of that, the Grell Harvester also plants grass, which means it's an enabler for all sorts of proxy bases, and of course cannon, well, let's call them cultivator rushes, and stealing your opponent's base. We know it works, B know it works, and Full Art of course know it works, so yeah, be aware that one is very powerful. It's not quite an S tier, but definitely an A tier unit, probably better than the Worker for sure, and even better than the Artemis, because of course the Artemis does not enable a special strategy in a way that the Harvester does. Alright, so Weaver is up next. Weaver is a very, very interesting unit. I think it did not get as much playtime as it should have gotten for everyone to see how good the unit is, or in what sort of army composition you want them. Even though the Weaver is just awesome. It shuts down hero builds from a Legion just with one ability, so you have to be super careful. And they are more spammable, so you can have like 2 or 3 Weavers for every hero your opponent makes, and that becomes very brutal. Their ability is also mana based, and on top of that they can also be used on your units, which means they restore HP instead of just stunning them like opponents' units would be. Yeah, and that means that they regenerate a lot of HP on all those infused powerhouses, especially, of course, the Rageborn, which will be covered in a future video, but the Weaver, yeah, the Weaver for sure is an S tier unit. It does not have as much damage output, but it's just insane at shutting stuff down. And of course, keeping your own units alive. So for sure an S tier, you kind of always want some Weavers. And yeah, that makes it for sure S tier. Next up, we got the Bastion. So Bastions can be quite brutal, again, against Stinger type armies, against Commando type armies, and of course against Ranged Thrall type armies. They do suffer against armies that have units in them with armor. So by armor, in this case, not the armor type, but a flat damage blocking ability. And of course the Bastion cannot hit air and really needs its upgrades to fully shine. Overall, oh yeah, and of course let's not forget that you can also put the Bastion into a Strider, which makes them a crazy AoE destroying kind of tool. So the Bastion, let's see where it goes. Yeah, it's a B tier unit for sure. It does all the right things, it's powerful, it's flexible, and the reasons why you would make a Bastion, yeah, it just fulfills those and gets the job done. Alright, next up, the Avenger. The Avenger, the small traditional tank type unit for the Protectorate. This is an interesting one because it's very like situational when you want them, but when you want them, they are like incredibly strong, and of course their upgrades are on the more broken side of things. Yeah, dealing like, what is it, 20% of your opponent's max HP with each shot is just nuts. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, you have to work to get the upgrade done, but when you do, man, your opponent is gonna feel it. So that, and in Protectorate against Protectorate, the Avenger, of course, beats out the Juggernaut just in terms of like value. The heat ability for the Juggernaut does not matter, so the only thing that the Juggernaut could do is get the attack speed aura, which is nice, of course. But overall, you just want Avengers, because Avengers take more damage, and they deal more damage against the mech types like the Juggernaut, so yeah, the Avenger just beats it. And even against Growl, against Harbingers and Reavers, yeah, the Avenger is just a great unit. So also, yeah, it has 2 upgrades. The Gatling, I think, is it a Gatling gun? You get it so rarely. Is like a pretty weak version. It's nice when you're at full supply and you got resources lying around. And yeah, then you can get it. But the other one is an aura that reduces incoming damage for your infantry, which makes the Avenger a nice addition to infantry armies, of course. You want to have like 1 or 2 with the upgrade, so your entire army takes 20% less damage or has therefore like 20% more HP. That is quite powerful, so yeah, a good use for Avengers, even if your opponent does not have like Harbingers or Terror Tanks or Juggernauts or anything that needs the additional damage that the Juggernaut provides. Not the Juggernaut, the Avenger, of course, provides with its heavy attack. Where does it go on the tier list? The Avenger, for sure. It's not a C tier. It's probably one of the lowest B tier units. Maybe a mid B tier. We'll figure it out. All right. Next up, the Behemoth. It's one of the most beautiful flying units. Well, not yet, but it will be when the wings are finally there, when it's infused. And the Behemoth is quite a problematic unit because of the way it works, of course. A giant flying unit that only attacks ground and even has an AoE burn ability. Oof. That is quite a package and could make it like be very, very broken, rivaling stuff like the Artemis or the Weaver. But at the moment, the HP and supply cost and overall the entire package is just not up there. So it's a situational counter for Protectorate armies that are ground-based, or just a good tool against Legion, because Legion at the moment just has no real good way to deal with flying units except Kragar with multi-shot. But if for some reason they went for the nuke, then the Behemoth can really shine in those situations. So yeah, you probably never really want to make one, but like you never want to make one if you're not in one of those special circumstances. So the Behemoth, a D tier unit. There's nothing wrong with it, but you just never really are like, okay, I need to make a Behemoth right now to just have my army be amazing. All right. Next up, the Armored Thrall. So the second barracks unit for the Legion. The Armored Thrall, of course, does also trigger Value and Death, even heals more with its Value and Death heal trigger, but when it dies, it can of course only once trigger the additional attack speed, and the additional attack speed is really what Legion wants to get during their fights, which makes the Armored Thrall's passive value a little bit worse than the ranged Thrall's value, because you get 2, so you can get 30% attack speed compared to 15%. And yeah, that makes the Armored Thrall weaker in that regard. Also, it does not have really any good upgrades. The Armored Thrall should have like either a Zealot type charge, but it does not have that, so it can never reach its opponents. And even when it's there, when it reaches them, it does not have a slow, so it probably just doesn't stick to the units, which means that, yeah, every Legion army like wants a very few amount of Armored Thralls just to have more complexity to the army. And of course the armor on the Thralls, so again, the 1 damage block that they have is quite cute, especially in the early game when it just matters more for some reason because your opponent has less units, so the Armored Thrall then might even get close, and it supports heroes just very nicely. And that makes the Armored Thrall a C tier unit. Let's see, is it better than the Juggernaut? I like the Juggernaut. No, I don't think it's better than the Juggernaut. It's like, you're gonna see some Armored Thralls throughout a Legion game, but you're never gonna be like, oh wow, those Thralls, whew, they really did the job.